Thank you, everybody, for coming to the Aaron Torres Podcast YouTube page. If you could do me a quick favor, see that little subscribe button at the bottom of your screen? Go ahead, click that subscribe button. Really does help our channel grow, our audience grow, and I really do appreciate it more than you know. So click that subscribe button. Appreciate your support. Now, here's the video that you came here for. But at the end of the day, that's all water under the bridge. And what I want to do now is talk about Mark Pope because, again, I truly believe he is a guy that is going to work. I believe he's going to win at Kentucky. And I believe bluntly, if you're a Kentucky fan listening right now, guess what? Mark Pope is going to give you everything that you have wanted in a head coach for years. A guy that understands the program, a guy that's going to bring a bit more stability, less roster turnover, fun style of play. I think you're really going to like him. Okay, so first of all, Mark Pope, listen. I think everybody knows former Kentucky player. You don't need me to tell you that. It's not breaking news. It's not the most shocking thing that you have ever seen, okay? Mark Pope is a former Kentucky player, was part of the 96 national championship team. And I think that's the first thing that comes to mind when I think of Mark Pope. Now, we know, by the way, very smart guy. As I said, I had him on the Aaron Torres pod in 2020 at some point. You can go through the archives and find it. It is there. Not available on YouTube, unfortunately, but it is available on Apple and Spotify. But I bring it up because a smart guy, remember, this guy went to medical school when he was coming out of college, decides to get into coaching. He had some great line about, I must be the dumbest doctor ever because I left medicine to go into coaching. But first off, the fact that he is a Kentucky guy. Now, listen, I don't think that Kentucky should only hire Kentucky guys. I hate that. It very rarely works. John Calipari wasn't a Kentucky guy. Rick Pitino wasn't a Kentucky guy, whatever. But I do think, first and foremost, I think he understands this fan base better than virtually anybody else that could have taken the job. Like, that was my biggest issue with Scott Drew. I don't think Scott Drew has ever, at any point, dealt with the criticism and, frankly, what's the right word? The fishbowl that is Kentucky. As we've discussed many times, every move you make is analyzed. Every piece of audio, every press conference you have, every answer is overanalyzed and discussed and talked about. Every recruit that you offer gets hit up by 20 recruiting writers that cover Kentucky trying to get a quote. It's different, but I think Mark Pope gets it. As a matter of fact, I'll tell you this, okay? I thought it was really interesting. I saw a couple people on Thursday night, basically, I don't want to say the Kentucky fans were trying to pull a, Greg Schiano type situation at Tennessee, but there was some real anger. And it was funny because I saw, a couple people ask, like, I wonder how Mark Pope is viewing this. And I think Greg Schiano freaked out and was like, I'm out. I hate to say it, Kentucky fans. I think that Mark Stoops kind of freaked out when he saw the reaction to A&M and said it's not worth it. You know what I think Mark Pope did when he saw that Kentucky fan reaction to his hire? He probably smiled and said, like, Kentucky, that's them right there, and listen, I don't think, again, being a Kentucky guy is not a prerequisite. Being a Kentucky guy, it should not be the number one thing on your resume. But I think he understands that fan base. He was probably laughing like, yeah, they're crazy. They probably hate my guts right now. Wait till they see me on the court come November. He knows the fans. He understands what it's about. It's funny, right? Like, me being a UConn guy, like I get how UConn fans are. I know how they're going to react to certain things. And I have no doubt that he knew what the reaction was going to be. And I don't think it scared him. I don't think it intimidated. And matter of fact, I think he probably chuckled at it. I think he probably laughed at it, thought it was funny, and had a good time. And so that's the first thing you need to know about Mark Pope. And the one thing I did say, because as I said, I didn't love the process of how we got to Mark Pope, but I don't hate the hire. And the one thing I will say about Mark Pope, I did say on Thursday night, I said, Kentucky fans, just give it to the opening press conference. He's having the opening press conference at Rupp Arena. My understanding is fans will be allowed to come in. I think he is going to make you laugh. He's going to make you cry. He's going to make you do everything. That's the kind of personality he has. The only way I can describe him, frankly, is with the word that your old coach used to use all the time. I think he's a really swaggy dude. He walks in, he's confident. He's confident in who he is. He's confident in what he's about. And I think it's going to rub off on Kentucky fans. And I think pretty quickly you're going to be like, oh my God, this guy is more dynamic than I thought. This guy understands the responsibilities of this job better than I thought. And I think bluntly, you're going to come out of Sunday's press conference really impressed. By the way, I can't wait to hear from you because we will be going live Sunday afternoon, Sunday evening, right after that press conference or whenever the press conference happens, whatever. Now, in terms of the basketball, that's the stuff that you guys and girls have already spent all night up, probably watching more BYU highlights than you ever imagined, okay? And what I will say, I get it. I know the resume. I know the track record. I know that he has never won an NCAA tournament game, okay? First off, I would say that is a little bit misleading, and let me explain why. The 2020 BYU team was loaded, okay? That was a team, they played in the WCC tournament, but they were red hot to end the year. They played in the same league as Gonzaga. I believe that year they may have beaten Gonzaga the final week of the regular season. Let me go ahead and look it up. They certainly did. They beat Gonzaga on the final Saturday of the season. And that was a team that was good enough to go to a Sweet 16, to go to an Elite Eight, to potentially even go to a Final Four. And so I bring it up because I know that since then there hasn't, he's never won a tournament game. Okay. I get that. I also get that his best team wasn't allowed to play in the NCAA tournament. And so Kentucky fans, if you're going to argue the 2020 Kentucky team with Tyrese Maxey and Ashton Hagans and Nick Richards and all those guys would have won the tournament, Mark Pope's team was good enough to get to the Final Four. What I would also say, that school is really hard to recruit to. The Athletic actually did a great piece this year. If you have an Athletic subscription, go through the archives and find it. And basically it was on the challenges of winning at BYU in this era right now, in this moment. And so I believe that that is something that has to be weighed in. It can't just be, has this guy won a national championship? It can't just be, has that guy won a national championship? Part of it has to be what you did relative to the resources that were available to you. Listen, I'm not going to claim to understand everything to do with the BYU admissions process. What I do know is you can't get everybody into school. And I'll even take it a step further. Not only can you not get everybody into school, the pool of students that actually want to go to BYU. Listen, I'll be honest, okay? I'll just say it. If you're in the car with kids, earmuffs, okay? But here's the truth. I wouldn't want to go to BYU. I like to maybe have a cold beverage. By the way, how about this? I'm drinking a cup of coffee right now, okay? Caffeine is not allowed on campus at BYU. Caffeine, coffee. This is coffee right here. You can't drink coffee at BYU. You can't drink alcohol at BYU. By the way, earmuffs if you have kids in the car. Can't have premarital sex. Hate to say it, that is a no-go for a lot of different 18 to 22-year-old kids that want to play college basketball and, frankly, have the full college experience. By the way, I'm not even making that part up. Remember, a couple of years ago, what was it? The Jimmer year, their second-best player, I think it was Brandon Davies, got thrown off the team or suspended from the team for having premarital sex. Don't think that's part of the admissions process at Kentucky. Could be wrong. Haven't read the admissions handbook in a minute. But I don't think premarital sex is something that eliminates you from being a candidate to go to Kentucky. And so you think about all the hard things that go into that job. You think about the pool of players. You could argue BYU, of every major power conference, they're right up there with Stanford, with Northwestern, in terms of the pool of players that's actually willing to play there. Again, I'm not criticizing. I wouldn't have gone there. I like coffee. I like vodka. I like females. Like, it is what it is. And so now he's going to Kentucky, and guess what? Those rules aren't there. If you can hoop and you can literally, and I'm not being facetious, and this is no disrespect because it's the same at my alma mater, it's the same at whatever, it's the same at Duke, it's the same wherever. If you can hoop and you can basically graduate high school, you can play basketball there. And so that to me is obviously the most interesting part. That to me is the most interesting part about the Mark Pope hire. It is point blank, very simply, what does the recruiting look like? Now, and I should mention, by the way, even before we get to recruiting, the basketball part is huge because, listen, what have you been telling me, Kentucky fans, for the past 10, 12, 18, 24 months? It's that the offense stinks. It's not a modern offense. We play through Oscar Tshiebwe, whatever. And then how fun was that this year? And you don't have to beg the coach to change up the style of play. And by the way, I'm not criticizing Cal. Kentucky was awesome this year. They were a 3 seed. They were good enough to make a Final Four, compete for a national championship, okay? But at the same time, when I think about Mark Pope, I think about a couple things. One, what I do think that style of play that you've been craving, demanding, it's coming, baby. 81 points per game this year. Obviously, you know it goes without saying. Is that I think what they either led the country in 3-point attempts or 3-point makes, whatever. Spacing, ball movement, floor spacing, modern this, modern that. And I will say, we're going to get to Mark Pope's checklist, the things that he needs to do right now. But at the same time, I think there's some players that are already in the program that are kind of built to play in this system. Reed Sheppard, Big Z, Aaron Bradshaw, who I know is in the portal, whatever. And we'll talk about the potential of retaining them in a minute. But the style of play is what you wanted. And Kentucky fans will tell you what else. You know what else you wanted? You wanted a coach that was going to build a program and not build roster after roster after roster, year after year after year. Well, this guy is the best of both worlds. I think he understands what it takes to win at Kentucky. And I think he's going to recruit the best of the best as he can, as he sees fit. But I don't think the end game is get the 5 best players in the country, get them in, try to win, and get them out. I think it becomes the true balance that you've wanted. Yes, I think he's going to try to recruit 5 stars, but I think he's going to try to recruit a couple guys that fit in the system, a couple developmental guys. He'll go into the portal for guys that he needs to plug a hole with. But this is what you've wanted, right? You've wanted a coach with the modern offense, check. You've wanted a coach that understands the program, check. You've wanted a coach that believes in building a roster and putting together a program, not just teams, not just week after week, year after year. But at the end of the day, this is what you wanted. And so ultimately, I don't hate the hire. I said it on Thursday night. I said it to lead the show. I didn't love the process to get here, but I didn't love the hire. Now, the big thing, and it goes without saying, this is the obvious part, right? Is it comes down to recruiting. What kind of players can you get into the program? What kind of players can you retain? We'll go through the checklist in a minute. But at the end of the day, listen, I don't think you need 7 McDonald's All-Americans to win at the highest level. I know that John Calipari in his introductory press conference, he said, we're bringing in the best of the best, okay? And that was John Calipari's style. I don't think that's going to be Mark Pope's style, and that's okay. You have to get used to, and you have to be okay with the fact that it's not always just going to be the 7 best players on a 24/7 list or an on-3 list or a 5-star list or whatever. But that's okay. That's kind of what you wanted. And I kind of think that's what's going to happen. But it does come down to players, right? And I think, listen, the smart basketball people, besides me, of course, but the smart ones. I saw Jimmy Dykes say this. I saw Terrence Oglesby from Field of 68. He's smart. He understands the game. It is still about players. And listen, it ain't going to be easy. That guy down in Arkansas is going to be trying to get every 5-star and shove it in your face and prove Mitch Barnhart that he made the wrong decision. Rick Barnes, I still think, is an elite coach. I know he gets criticized nonstop. I think you could argue Tennessee had the 3rd best team in college basketball this year behind UConn and Purdue. Tennessee played Purdue tougher than anybody in the tournament except for UConn. Nate Oates is a star, not a rising star, a star in coaching. I'll give him credit. I think some of the younger guys have been very good. Lamont Paris at South Carolina. Who am I blanking on? Todd Golden at Florida, I think has been really, really, really impressive. So it is going to come down to the players, and I do think it matters. Go ahead and drop questions.